This is a 2000 Chevy Silverado that I rescued from the parking lot of a plumbing supply company exactly 1 year ago. And over the last 12 months, we've completely transformed it from a worn out, neglected, and bone stock Silverado into the all-wheel drive, supercharged, bright orange monster that it is today. Now, we just finished up the transmission swap going from a 60E to an 80E, which means this portion of the build is 100% complete. So I wanted to take some time to give you guys a condensed look at the entire build process, start to finish, from 1 year ago until today, just to kind of give you an idea of what it took to build this truck. And in addition, since we did finish up the transmission swap, we need to find out if we made it slower or possibly faster. Now, I'll admit that building a somewhat heavy pickup truck into a performance vehicle doesn't really make a whole lot of sense on the surface, but I'm obsessed with pickup trucks, I'm obsessed with going fast, and I kind of like a challenge of doing something that doesn't make a whole lot of sense on the surface. And when you put that all together into a package like this, I'll tell you, there is nothing like the feeling of pulling it up next to a fancy looking muscle car and just blowing his doors off as you take off from a stoplight. That feeling right there makes it worth every dollar that I spent on parts and every minute that I spent out in the shop, in the heat, in the cold, late at night, working to build this creation. Now, because we are trying to go fast, I do take data measurements along every step of the way. And sometimes we find out that the mods that we did, they work out pretty good. And other times, it doesn't go according to plan. So after we took our baseline performance test, it was pretty clear that we needed to make a little bit more horsepower. And I could have just started out by bolting a big old massive 80mm turbo onto the 4.8. But I wanted to build this thing up in stages, and the first goal, or the first milepost, I wanted to make as much horsepower as my 8.1 swap did back when it was naturally aspirated, while spending the exact same amount of money that the swap cost. So that meant I wanted to make 300 horsepower at the wheels from a naturally aspirated 4.8, all for $3,000, which means we had to gain another 100 horses. I did wind up blowing my original budget of $3,000, but at the time I didn't really care because I had a truck that did not leak any more oil. It had a nice aggressive sounding exhaust. It had gapped rings for boost, and I was confident that we were going to blow away my original 300 horse goal. In fact, I was even thinking we could make like 310 or 320, but unfortunately, the dyno is the ultimate lie detector. After the first round of upgrades, we made an impressive 275 horsepower and 279 pounds of torque. That means a gain of 67 horsepower and only 50 pounds of torque. Totally missed the mark, but we continued to press on anyway, and we took it out on the road to see how fast it was, or was not. I got to admit to you guys, at this point in the build process, I was pretty bummed with how the truck was performing, especially given the amount of effort and money that we spent on this thing to get to that point. The results just were not spectacular. I kind of even started second guessing myself, thinking like, man, maybe I should have put a 5.3 or a 6.0 in here, or maybe I should take that 4.8 and put it into something that weighs 2,000 pounds less. But I had a plan, I wanted to stick to it, and I knew with the right combination of parts, we could get where we wanted to be. Phase 2 of the build is what I call the quit messing around stage, and we finally got serious about adding some power to this 4.8. So the LSA blower originally made about 13 pounds of boost with the 255 upper pulley that we used to have on here. We've since upgraded it even more, but the combination of the instant torque of the LSA blower and the 430 gears out back did prove to be a bit of a handful. So after a few failed attempts, we wound up doing a 0 to 60 run of 6.4 seconds, and we covered the 8th mile in 9.3 seconds at 80 miles an hour. Now, at this point in the build process, it was early springtime and LS Fest West was just around the corner. And I signed up for the Grand Champion class, but I knew the truck just wasn't going to perform in its current state. So I decided to make the two single biggest upgrades that this truck has ever had, and they made a significant improvement with how it performed. But before we did that, while the truck was still in two-wheel drive, we had to have a little bit of fun. E85. Oh, 12.1! Yes! Oh, that is quick.
Now in start. To our final run.
So after LS Fest, I was ecstatic with how well this truck performed. We did a best quarter mile of 12:10. It ran 770 in the 8th, and we even managed to beat a handful of muscle cars at the drag strip and even in the speed stop challenge, which was like my absolute favorite event that I have ever competed in. We got first place in the Grand Champion truck class with this, at the time, stock suspension all-wheel drive supercharged truck. It was a blast. Now, to top it all off, we put the truck on the dyno shortly after, where with only 50% ethanol content fuel in the tank, we made 530 horsepower at the wheels, 550 pounds of torque, which was a gain of something like 255 horsepower over our baseline NA runs. It is important to note that up until this point, all the runs that we've been doing and all the abuse that we've put this truck through has been with the 4.8, with the LSA Supercharger and the stock 4L60 transmission, which honestly had me scratching my head, like, how is this transmission holding up? I wanted to do the 80E swap before LS Fest. I ran out of time, but it performed amazingly. Like, I did countless 0 to 60 runs, countless launches, like over and over and over again. That 60E, it kept clicking off those shifts exactly when it was supposed to, and it never complained once. But I did know that was an anomaly and it would not last forever. With the transmission installed and the coilovers up front, we now have what I would consider to be the ultimate sport truck. And it has a drivetrain that's pretty much bulletproof, and it's going to hold up to just about any modification that we could throw under the hood. But the one question that everybody has is, will the heavier 4L80 slow the truck down? Now, luckily we have some baseline data. I can't use the quarter-mile pass from Las Vegas because that was at about 2,000 feet lower of elevation than where I am right now, but I did happen to get a baseline pass at my local drag strip with the 4L60. And we also just did a test session with the 4L80. So it is worth noting that both of these tests were done in the exact same way, where I just kind of foot braked it to kind of get up against the converter. That yielded the best results in both different cases. And there's two different ways this could have gone. Either the heavier 4L80 could have absorbed more horsepower and made the truck a little bit slower, or the better torque converter that we installed could have offset some of that increased mass, as well as the less than ideal gear ratio that the 4L80 has compared to the 60. So anyway, believe it or not, we actually made the truck ever so slightly quicker. It absolutely did not slow down. Here's the data side by side. The 60-foot time is identical. The 0 to 60 time is ever so slightly quicker on the 80E. The 8th mile time is also identical, but at a faster mile an hour to the 80E. And then the quarter mile time is 0.02 of a second quicker with the 80E at almost a full mile an hour faster. So definitely a win in my book. I am really pumped with how the COPO truck turned out. And this is kind of a good close to the first chapter of this build. We do have some more things in store for this truck. We're not going to get into that right now, but I want to say thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. If you want to find out more information on this build, I've got a whole playlist I'll link down below showing every single step in detail. But thank you guys for watching. Come back soon for more cool truck content.